What's up, guys? Welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today we're on episode 83, and again, I'm going into previously uncharted territory in this episode. Today, I want to talk about acid house. Acid house, as many of you know, was born in the mid to late 80s, and it was basically a sound that accompanied house music and was mainly centered around the Roland TB-303, which was originally considered to be like a gimmicky, kind of junky piece of hardware. But a few crafty, kind of dedicated producers kind of nerded out and took this TB-303 that many people considered to be a sonic failure and used it to spawn an entire new genre of electronic music. Now, I don't claim to be an acid house expert, so I'm not gonna like try to get too into the nuances of how it was born and how it's made, because I'm not really fundamentally a producer. But I do have some acid house tracks in my collection that I consider to be like very serious bombs. And I also want to say that I'm very discerning when it comes to acid house. When I listen through Juno samples, there's a lot of times, I would say like 99% of the time, when I see something that looks like an acid record or it's got like acid in the name, I'm really skeptical of it. And I think the reason is that if done poorly, the squeal of a 303 can actually be really grating and it can be pretty obnoxious. So when somebody pulls that sound off really well, it's like kind of like hat tip to you, sir. That's awesome. So I have 5 kind of randomish acid picks for you out of my collection that have really stood the test of time, and I think you guys will enjoy these. My first pick today is by an artist that came out of Detroit in 2007 and sort of launched his own sound, launched his own label, and did everything kind of from the ground up. That's Jared Wilson. And Jared Wilson centers his sound around the 303. Now, whether or not he's actually using the physical hardware or computer plugins, I don't know. Probably the physical hardware, because he just seems to have this kind of rawness to the tracks that he makes. And this was the first debut release on his label, which is 7777, like quadruple 7. And he basically started the label himself, put out his own tracks, went crazy with the acid. It's like acid house, acid techno, depending on which track you're talking about. And he also kind of brings this like kind of grungy aesthetic. Like it's almost like acid grunge, you know, no offense to Jared for that. But it just seems like with the art and this like really cool kind of like dark and grimy artwork that's going on here, and the fonts that, you know, Jared's not going for anything pleasant here. He's going for the rawness. And this track called Drug Related Stories got a remix by an artist or a duo named TNT. TNT is Todd Osborne, who also has released on Quadruple 7, the Jared's label. And there's another guy, Tad something, that was in the duo. And they just dropped this like mega raw, like acid house bomb from like outer space. It's so hectic and chaotic, yet really fun and crazy to listen to, man. If you turn this thing up, your brain won't even know like which way it's going, because it's just so mental. But man, do I love this record. My next recommendation for you is one that came out all the way in 1988. And the reason that I wanted to present this to you is because this track This track is so far ahead of its time, it's ridiculous. So it came out in 1988, and it's Mori Conti's Yeki Yeki, right? Mori Conti is a producer. He passed away in 2020, unfortunately, and he's from a country in West Africa known as Guinea. And he put out this track in 1988 called Yeki Yeki, which is remarkably house-ish, even though I don't think that was the original intention. It's got really busy drum rhythms, kind of a fun whaley vocal. And the reason that this track blew up isn't because of Mory Kante, unfortunately. It's because Richie Hawtin in 2008 started playing the afro-acid version of this, which you can see is kind of promoted on the label here. The afro-acid mix was done by Martin Young, who was one of the members of the group Mars, M.A.R.R.S., which did that classic kind of rave big beat track, Pump Up the Volume. So Hawtin plays this track at Time Warp in 2008, which I'm going to give you guys a clip of at the end of the movie if you want to watch. It's funny to watch because it's like one of those classic scenes where Hawtin's playing and like literally everybody else at the party, like all the other famous DJs, I think it's Luciano, is just like hovering around the booth and like trying to like get Richie's attention while he's DJing and mixing and editing. And it's just one of those like obnoxious scenes where there's like 100 people in the DJ booth and there should really only be 3. So it's kind of funny to watch in that regard. But Hawtin basically resurrected this track, which was like a $3 record, and just blew it up. And like all of a sudden, everybody in the house and techno scene had to have a copy of it, me included. And it sounds really good. I will say the afro-acid mix that people worship so highly is extremely similar to the original mix, which is just kind of just shows you how far ahead of its time the original mix was. And the reason it's called the afro-acid mix is because it has an acid element mixed in and basically used as the bass line. And it really does add like a very nice, like kind of like soft, plasticky, bouncy kind of feel to the bass line. It basically sounds like rubberized bass line, if that makes any sense. But it turned out exquisite, and what a record. My next pick for you is a little bit of an obscurity, but I've talked to many people that are familiar with this record, kind of oddly. The artist is Weng, and I think his name is Richard Wengman. And here he released this track on Temple, which is kind of like an oddity, obscurity label. The track that I like on here is called Two Lions. And it's like a nice modern take on 90s acid ambient, if that makes any sense. Like, you can tell that it was made, I think this came out in 2018. You can tell that it was made recently, but it seems to be inspired from tracks from the 92, 93 era. And I think that's why a lot of people still like this. The track Two Lions, it has like a very serene vibe to it. And it sounds like something that would have went well on the Aphex Twin Selected Ambient Works 85 to 92 double pack. So if you like the aesthetic of that Aphex Twin pack that I just mentioned, you'll definitely like this. And there's 3 other tracks on here that are different tempos and different aesthetics, but it's a very well-rounded record that you would want to keep in your collection for a long time. This record here is by an artist that I've talked about previously on this channel in my Dark Techno episode. I'll give you a link down below. I talked about Adam, and he goes by Adam TM, like with a little trademark symbol, which kind of makes him hard to Google search. He dropped this record here on Bunker. Bunker, New York is a very established dark techno label that's been putting records out since 2014. And here he kind of dropped another sleeper. Adam TM is always a sleeper in my opinion. I don't ever hear people hyping him or talking about him, but at the same time, he's very talented and makes some really crazy creations. And speaking of crazy, here he drops his track called, if I say this right, Acid Sex Magic. I want to make sure I got the words right. I clocked this on my phone. I have a little BPM counter on my phone. It's 108 beats per minute of this slow pounding acid techno beat where the acid is very like long and drawn out and kind of like snaky sounding, and it's got a really dark pitch down vocal. So man, what's the venue or vibe for this? Probably some really dark place. There's nothing happy about this, but if you like kind of dungeon acid techno, this is where it's at. My last pick for you is by an artist that most people know, who is Jaydee. Now, Jaydee did the track way back, I don't even know when, 1990, I'm just going to throw a guess. 1990, did the track Plastic Dreams. I feel like it was like early 90s. I don't know. I could be totally wrong on that. But Jaydee is still around, and he released this record on a label called Reptile Dysfunction. And the track is called Back Into Acid. Now, I've played this set. Like I said, I don't collect acid house. I barely play it. But this goes well in a dark tech house or a dark techno set, especially in like the early stages. It has a really nice progression in the beginning of the track that makes it fun to mix, and it's very suspenseful, and it has a drop. There's a section that you'll hear in the samples here where the mids are just sort of like tapping and going in like rapid fire fashion, and all of a sudden the acid elements get all like squelchy and weird and start dropping in and hitting really hard. And this thing just has like momentum to it. Like I just love how like it's just like a guaranteed fist pump moment when this thing kicks in. And it's just wild to see Jaydee coming back after however many years and, you know, doing his famous track Plastic Dreams. And then this came out in 2017 and he showed us that he still got it. Alright guys, that's all. That's the end of my first acid episode. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you're feeling this. I can come back and probably do a part 2 for this later on. I have other acid records that I would love to include in an episode. So let me know how you're feeling and enjoy the rest of your summer. Enjoy your Labor Day. Take care. Peace.